Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone." Emma Thompson nervously adjusted her borrowed powder blue dress as she surveyed the opulent ballroom of Manhattan's Grand Metropolitan Hotel. As a freelance lifestyle journalist, she was here to cover what society magazines called the wedding of the century, except her press credentials had mysteriously disappeared at check-in. "Just grab a few shots and get out of here," she muttered to herself, discreetly holding up her phone camera. That's when she backed straight into a waiter carrying a towering tray of champagne flutes. Golden liquid exploded in every direction, completely drenching the expensive black tuxedo of a tall man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, who had been deep in conversation with a group of business executives. "No way. I'm so incredibly sorry." Emma rushed toward him, grabbing every napkin within reach. "Let me help fix this. I'll pay for professional cleaning. Buy you a replacement. Anything you need." The man cut her off with an amused smirk. "And you are exactly..." "Emma, I'm James." An elegant woman in her 70 seconds practically floated over, radiating pure excitement. "There you are. Where have you been keeping this absolutely gorgeous girl hidden?" Emma opened her mouth to explain, but the woman continued without pause. "Sweetheart, you must be the famous mystery bride. James has been so hush-hush about this surprise wedding, but he never brought you around to meet the family." "Surprise wedding. Bride." Emma stared in confusion at James, who looked thoroughly entertained by the unfolding disaster. "Grandma Eleanor," James said slowly, "I'd like you to meet Emma." She jumped in desperately, extending her trembling hand. "It's wonderful to finally meet you." Grandma Eleanor immediately pulled her into a warm, perfumed embrace. "What a beautiful young woman. And that dress is absolutely perfect, so chic and bridal." That's when the terrible truth hit Emma. Her borrowed outfit, courtesy of her fashion designer friend, actually did look like something a modern bride might wear to an elegant ceremony, and she was obviously at the wrong event entirely. This wasn't the celebrity wedding she was supposed to be covering. "Everyone." Grandma Eleanor clapped her hands sharply, capturing the attention of the entire room. "Come meet James's stunning bride." Emma's stomach dropped to the floor. Dozens of well-dressed guests turned to stare at them. Professional photographers began pushing through the crowd. She looked desperately at James, silently pleading with him to end this nightmare. Instead, he smoothly wrapped his arm around her waist and announced clearly, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to introduce my fiancée, Emma Thompson." Before she could say a word, James kissed her. It was soft but convincing. Exactly the kind of kiss that would fool an entire ballroom of wedding guests. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. Emma felt her knees weaken from a combination of pure shock and something she absolutely refused to analyze. When they separated, she whispered frantically, "Have you lost your mind?" James grinned wickedly, whispering back, "Welcome to the Wentworth family, darling. Now smile like you mean it. You're officially my bride-to-be." Emma forced her brightest fake smile as excited guests surrounded them while her brain screamed, "What kind of chaos have I just walked into?" Explanation right now. Emma practically dragged James to a secluded corner of the ballroom, away from the excited guests. "You first." James crossed his arms, clearly enjoying himself. "What's a freelance journalist doing crashing my cousin's wedding reception?" Emma choked. "How do you know I'm a journalist?" "Emma Thompson, lifestyle freelancer, specializes in high society events. I have an excellent security team." He checked his platinum watch. "Took them exactly 11 minutes to send me your complete professional portfolio. That's a total invasion of privacy. That's smart business. Now answer the question. Why are you here?" Emma sighed in defeat. "No point lying now. I got a tip about the wedding of the century happening at this hotel today. Thought it was the Carter Morgan ceremony on the 15th floor. James burst out laughing. "That circus? Trust me. You're better off down here. At least our caterer knows how to cook salmon properly. Why didn't you correct your grandmother when she called me your bride?" James's smile faded slightly. "Grandma Eleanor is 76 and has a serious heart condition. For months, she's been begging to see me married before when she saw you, her face lit up in a way I haven't seen in years." Emma felt an unexpected tug at her heartstrings. "James, I understand that, but I can't pretend to be your fiancé. This is absolutely insane." Aunt Emma, a boy around 9 years old, came racing over and attached himself to her leg. "Grandma Eleanor told everyone you're going to be our new aunt. Do you like baseball?" Emma looked helplessly at James for rescue. "Ben, this is Emma," James said, ruffling the kid's hair. "And yes, she's a huge Yankees fan." "No way. Ben's eyes went wide. "What's your favorite player?" "Aaron Judge," Emma ventured, making James bite back a grin. "He's the best. Do you have season tickets? Can you take me to a game?" "Sure. I'll check my schedule." Ben sprinted away to tell his friends. Emma groaned. "Congratulations. You just made a 9-year-old's entire year," James chuckled. "This has to stop now." "One night," James said seriously. "Give me one night. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything to the family. Take full responsibility, and you'll never have to see us again." Emma studied his face. "Why should I trust you?" "Because you just ruined a $1,500 tuxedo and haven't offered to pay for it yet," he replied with that infuriating smirk. $1,500? Emma nearly shrieked. "Relax. It's only $1,200. That's not better. I don't have that kind of money." "Then we have a deal." James extended his hand. "One night of fake engagement. And we're even." Emma stared at his outstretched hand. Then at the party. Then at Grandma Eleanor, who was beaming at them from across the room. "I'm going to regret this so badly," she muttered, shaking his hand. "Probably," James agreed, "but it'll be entertaining." That's when the orchestra began playing a romantic waltz, and Grandma Eleanor called out, "Time for the engagement dance." Emma and James looked at each other in horror. "Please tell me you know how to waltz," she said weakly. "Of course I do. Private school, remember? Fantastic. Because I have 2 left feet, and I'm about to destroy your Italian leather shoes." James laughed. "They're actually English, and you'll do better than you think." He led her onto the dance floor, while Emma silently panicked about becoming a viral wedding fail video. What have I gotten myself into? The music began with a soft, romantic melody that seemed to echo through every corner of the grand ballroom. James positioned his hands on Emma's waist with the effortless grace of someone who'd been trained in ballroom dancing since childhood. She, on the other hand, stood rigid as a telephone pole. "Breathe," he whispered in her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "It's just following my lead. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's about to turn this elegant waltz into a slapstick comedy routine." The first few steps were absolutely catastrophic. Emma managed to step on his feet 3 times in the span of 15 seconds, apologizing profusely each time. "Stop apologizing and listen to me," James said patiently, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Look at my eyes, not at the floor." Emma reluctantly lifted her gaze and found herself momentarily lost. His eyes were an intense shade of blue, like the ocean during a storm, with tiny flecks of silver that caught the ballroom chandelier light. And despite being doused in champagne earlier, he somehow smelled incredible, a mix of expensive cologne and something uniquely masculine. "Much better," he smiled, and she felt her stomach do an unwelcome little flip. "Now tell me something. Why journalism?" "What?" "Your LinkedIn profile says you've wanted to be a journalist since you were 12. Why?" Emma stumbled again, nearly taking them both down. "You read my entire LinkedIn profile? Most fascinating 5 minutes of my evening." So, despite the absurd situation, Emma found herself relaxing slightly. "My dad always said I asked too many questions for my own good, that I was constantly sticking my nose where it didn't belong. And now you get paid to stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Smart career move. It's more complicated than that." Emma suddenly realized she was dancing without stepping on him. "Wait, I'm actually dancing. Miracles do happen. Keep talking. You're less tense when you're distracted." "Well, I originally wanted to be an investigative reporter, exposing corruption and making a real difference, but I ended up covering society parties because, frankly, it pays the rent and makes you miserable." It wasn't a question. Emma looked at him sharply, surprised by his perceptiveness. "I wouldn't say miserable, more like settling for less than I dreamed of. That's worse than miserable." The music was building to a crescendo, and Emma noticed that other couples had joined them on the dance floor. They were no longer the center of attention, which was a massive relief. "What about you?" she found herself asking impulsively. "Why are you still single at, 35, 33? And because I'm a control-freak workaholic with trust issues the size of Manhattan." Emma laughed, genuinely surprised by his brutal honesty. "Wow, most people sugarcoat that part of the conversation. What's the point? You'd figure it out in 10 minutes anyway." 10 minutes? James spun her gracefully as the music swelled. "Average time it takes for my family to start sharing embarrassing stories about me." As if summoned by his words, James's uncle appeared at their elbow with a martini in his hand and a mischievous grin on his face. "James, You have to tell Emma about the time you tried to impress that girl in high school by joining the drama club. Emma raised an eyebrow, fighting back a smile. Drama club? I was 17, James said defensively. Though his ears were turning slightly red, he auditioned for Romeo and Juliet. Uncle Edward continued with obvious delight, but he was so nervous that when it came time for the balcony scene, he completely forgot his lines and started reciting the Gettysburg Address instead. You did not, Emma gasped, dissolving into laughter. 7 years ago, James muttered. Looking thoroughly embarrassed, did you get the part? They made him a tree in the forest scene. Uncle Edward cackled before wandering off to find his next victim. A tree? Emma was laughing so hard she could barely keep dancing. You were demoted to plant life. It was a very important tree, James protested. But he was grinning now, too. I'm sure it was. Did you at least get the girl? She started dating the guy who played Romeo. Apparently, knowing the Gettysburg Address by heart wasn't as romantic as I thought. Their laughter was interrupted by Grandma Eleanor, approaching with her phone in hand, and that dangerous gleam in her eye that meant trouble. James, darling, I simply must show Emma some photos. The blood drained from James's face. Grandma, maybe later would be better. Nonsense. Every fiancé needs to see pictures of her future husband as a child. Eleanor was already pulling Emma closer, phone in hand. Come here, sweetheart. James looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Grandma, please. Look at this precious angel. Eleanor showed Emma a photo of a 5-year-old James in a tiny sailor suit, grinning toothlessly at the camera. Wasn't he just adorable? Emma's heart melted instantly. He's absolutely adorable. And here he is at 10, at his first golf lesson. The next photo showed James in miniature golf attire, holding a club that was clearly too big for him, with a look of intense concentration on his young face. Stop. James tried to grab the phone, but Eleanor was too quick. Oh, but this is my absolute favorite. She swiped to another photo. James at 15, getting ready for the school dance. The image showed a teenage James in an obviously rented tuxedo that was slightly too large, with carefully slicked back hair and a nervous smile. But what made Emma's heart skip was the sweet vulnerability in his young face, so different from the confident businessman standing next to her now. He looked so sweet, Emma said softly, and something in her voice made James look at her more closely. He was the most polite teenager, Eleanor continued proudly. Always helped elderly ladies with their groceries. Volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. Still does, actually. You volunteer at an animal shelter? Emma looked at James with surprise. It's not a big deal, he said quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. He's being modest. Eleanor beamed. He's been helping out at Second Chance's Animal Rescue for over 10 years. The dogs absolutely adore him. Emma stared at James, seeing him in an entirely new light. The ruthless businessman who'd had her investigated in 11 minutes also spent his weekends helping homeless animals. That's really sweet, she said, and meant it. James looked genuinely embarrassed now. Can we please change the subject? But Eleanor wasn't finished. Oh, and I have to show you the video of him singing at last year's family talent show. Absolutely not, James said firmly, making a successful grab for the phone this time. You sing? Emma teased badly. Very, very badly. I find that hard to believe. Trust me. You'd change your mind if you heard it. The waltz was coming to an end. And as James dipped her gracefully for the final pose, Emma found herself staring up into those blue eyes and realizing something terrifying. She was actually starting to like him, and that definitely wasn't part of the plan. As the music stopped and the crowd applauded, James helped her back to standing. Not bad for someone with 2 left feet, he murmured. Not bad for someone who recites presidential speeches during Shakespeare auditions. She shot back. He laughed, and the sound sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. James, a new voice called out, bring Emma over here. We want to hear all about how you two met. Emma felt the panic return in full force. They were about to face a firing squad of curious relatives, and they didn't even have their story straight. This was about to get very interesting. 3 hours into the most elaborate lie of her life, Emma had somehow managed to promise her secret chocolate chip cookie recipe to 4 different aunts, agree to be the maid of honor for James's cousin Sophia's upcoming wedding, accept membership into the family's exclusive book club despite not having read a novel in 6 months, sign up for the annual Wentworth Family Charity Golf Tournament. She'd never held a golf club in her life, and, most terrifyingly, committed to hosting Thanksgiving dinner at her charming apartment, which was actually a studio the size of most people's closets. I've become a completely different person, she whispered desperately to James as they momentarily escaped to the hotel's elegant terrace for some air. The Manhattan skyline glittered before them, but all Emma could focus on was her mounting panic. "Welcome to the Wentworth family experience," James said, loosening his bow tie slightly. "They're enthusiastic adopters. Once they like you, you're basically stuck with them forever." "James, this is spiraling completely out of control. Your Aunt Catherine just asked me about our wedding venue preferences. Apparently, she has connections at 5 different country clubs and wants to start making calls tomorrow. Aunt Catherine loves planning other people's events. It's her hobby. It's not a hobby when the wedding doesn't exist." Emma began pacing frantically across the terrace's marble floor. "And your cousin Daniel cornered me by the dessert table, asking about my ring size because he knows a guy in the Diamond District who gives family discounts." James had the audacity to look amused. "Daniel's actually a good connection to have. His friend does beautiful work. Are you even listening to me?" Emma spun around to face him. "This isn't funny. I just spent 20 minutes discussing flower arrangements with your stepmother, who apparently has very strong opinions about peonies versus roses. Elizabeth does get passionate about floral design." "What did you tell her?" "That I'm allergic to peonies, which is a complete lie, but it was the only thing I could think of to avoid making a decision about flowers for a wedding that will never happen." James stepped closer, and Emma caught that intoxicating scent again, sophisticated and masculine and completely distracting. "Emma, take a breath. You're doing great. I'm doing terrible. I've told so many lies in the past 3 hours. I can't keep track of them all. I apparently grew up in Portland. No, wait. Seattle. No. It was definitely Portland. My college major changed from journalism to communications to English literature, depending on who was asking, and according to various conversations, my parents are either divorced, happily married, or my father is mysteriously traveling abroad for business. The family won't compare notes until tomorrow. At the earliest, we have time to sort out the details." "Sort out the details?" Emma's voice pitched higher. "James, your grandmother just pulled me aside and started talking about engagement party dates. She has her calendar out and everything." "What did you say?" "That we wanted something intimate and small, which apparently translates to only 200 people in Wentworth family terms. She's already mentally booked the country club for next month." James ran a hand through his dark hair, finally looking slightly concerned. "Okay, that's more accelerated than I expected. You think?" Emma collapsed onto one of the elegant outdoor chairs. "And then there's Ben. That sweet little boy has already planned our entire future together. Apparently, I'm taking him to Yankees games, teaching him how to make cookies, and helping him with his science fair project about volcanoes. Ben gets attached quickly. He hasn't had many positive female role models since his parents' divorce." "Don't." Emma held up a warning finger. "Don't you dare make me feel guilty about disappointing a 9-year-old with trust issues. I'm already hanging on by a thread here." James sat down across from her, and in the softer lighting of the terrace, she could see the genuine concern in his blue eyes. "Look, I know this got bigger than either of us anticipated, but my family genuinely likes you. Emma, that's not something that happens often." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the last woman I brought to a family event was my ex-girlfriend, Olivia. Within an hour, Grandma Eleanor was making passive-aggressive comments about her interesting fashion choices. Aunt Catherine was critiquing her table manners, and Uncle Edward was placing bets on how long the relationship would last. How long did it last? 2 more weeks. Olivia said my family was aggressively judgmental and socially exhausting. She wasn't wrong, Emma muttered, then immediately felt bad. "Sorry, I didn't mean." "No, she was absolutely right. My family is a lot to handle. They're opinionated. They ask personal questions. They meddle constantly. And they have zero concept of boundaries." James leaned forward, his expression serious. "But they welcomed you completely. In 3 hours, you've charmed every single person in that ballroom. Do you have any idea how remarkable that is?" Emma felt an unwelcome flutter of warmth in her chest. "I was just trying not to blow our cover. You were being yourself, and they love you for it." Before she could respond to that loaded statement, the terrace doors burst open, and Ben came racing out, still in his miniature suit, but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. "There you are," he exclaimed breathlessly. "Aunt Emma, you have to come back inside. Great-Uncle Arthur is about to tell the story about James's first business deal when he was 12. "Oh no," James groaned. "It's the one about the lemonade stand," Ben continued excitedly, "and how he tried to franchise it to all the kids in the neighborhood but ended up in a turf war with the girl next door who was selling cookies. That's not exactly how it happened." James protested weakly. "Come on." Ben grabbed Emma's hand and started pulling her toward the doors. Great Uncle Arthur does all the voices and everything." As they re-entered the ballroom, Emma was immediately struck by how warm and welcoming the atmosphere was. The Wentworth family might be overwhelming, but there was genuine love and joy in this room. She could see it in the way the elderly relatives beamed at the younger generation, how the cousins teased each other with obvious affection, and how everyone seemed genuinely excited to welcome her into their circle. Great Uncle Arthur, a distinguished man in his 82nds with twinkling eyes and a magnificent white mustache, had already gathered a crowd around him. "Ah, there's the lovely bride-to-be," he announced as they approached. "Come here, my dear. You simply must hear about your fiancé's early entrepreneurial adventures." "Please don't," James muttered, but he was smiling despite himself. Our young James was quite the businessman, even at 12. Arthur began with theatrical flair. He set up a lemonade stand outside our house, premium lemonade, mind you, with real lemons and organic sugar, 50 cents a cup, which was robbery for $1,995. But the boy had vision. The gathered family members chuckled, and Emma found herself genuinely curious about young James's business ventures. But then, Arthur continued dramatically. The little Parker girl 2 houses down started selling homemade cookies for 25 cents each. Suddenly, James's lemonade business was suffering from serious competition. "What did he do?" asked James's cousin Claire, even though she'd clearly heard this story multiple times. "He attempted a hostile takeover," Arthur announced with glee. Our 2-year-old mogul marched over to her house with a briefcase, an actual briefcase he'd borrowed from his father, and proposed a merger. He wanted to combine their operations. Parker's Cookies and Wentworth's Lemonade. A joint venture. "Did it work?" Emma asked, getting caught up in the story despite herself. The Parker girl told him his lemonade was too sour and his business proposal was stupid. Arthur chuckled. Then she set up a second cookie stand right next to his lemonade stand and started offering free cookies with every glass of store-bought lemonade she bought from the grocery store and marked up. She undercut him with his own product. Emma laughed. "Completely destroyed his profit margins," Arthur confirmed. But here's the brilliant part. Instead of admitting defeat, James convinced his younger sister Abigail to set up a third stand selling fresh fruit salad, positioned between the two competing stands. Wait, Emma was really invested now. What was the strategy there? James cleared his throat. The idea was to create a healthy eating destination zone. Customers could get a complete balanced snack, experience fruit, cookies, and lemonade, all in one convenient location. And did it work? For exactly one day, Arthur grinned, until Abigail ate most of the fruit inventory. And all 3 stands got shut down by the Homeowners Association for operating without permits. The entire group erupted in laughter, and Emma found herself laughing along genuinely. Looking at James, she could perfectly picture him as a determined 2-year-old, with a briefcase and big dreams. "That's actually brilliant strategy for a kid," she said admiringly. "See, I told you she was perfect for him." Grandma Eleanor appeared at Emma's elbow, beaming with pride. "Smart and supportive. That's exactly what our James needs." "Grandma," James started to protest. "Now, Emma, dear," Eleanor continued, "I was just talking to my friend Catherine, not our Catherine, the other Catherine, you know, from the garden club. And she mentioned that the Riverside Country Club has a cancellation for next spring. Beautiful venue, overlooks the water, perfect for a spring wedding. Should I have her put your name on the waiting list?" Emma felt the familiar panic rising. "That's so thoughtful, but we haven't really discussed timing yet." Of course. You young people like to take your time planning. Very wise." Eleanor patted her arm. "But just so you know, spring dates book up quickly, and a June wedding can be so cliché, don't you think?" "Absolutely," Emma agreed weakly, having no idea what she was agreeing to. "Eleanor, stop terrorizing the poor girl." Arthur intervened with a wink at Emma. "She just got engaged. Give her time to breathe." "I'm not terrorizing anyone," Eleanor protested. "I'm being helpful. Someone needs to guide these young people through the process. Do you know James has never even been engagement ring shopping? He probably doesn't know the first thing about diamonds." "I've never needed to know about diamonds," James said diplomatically. "Well, you do now." Eleanor looked positively delighted by this prospect. "Emma, dear, what's your preference? Classic solitaire, 3-stone setting, vintage Art Deco style?" Emma felt like she was drowning. I haven't really thought about it much. A woman who's not obsessed with ring details." Uncle Edward appeared with a fresh martini. "James, you'd better marry this one quickly before she changes her mind." Speaking of which, Aunt Catherine joined the growing circle. Have you two discussed the practical details? Where will you live? Emma, will you be keeping your apartment? We're still figuring things out. James jumped in smoothly. Sensible. Catherine nodded approvingly, though you might want to start looking at places together soon. The good neighborhoods move quickly. And if you're planning a family, eventually. Family? Emma's voice came out as a squeak. Well, naturally. Catherine looked surprised. You do want children, don't you? James has always been wonderful with kids. Ben adores him. And James has been fantastic with him since the divorce. Yes, children are. Emma looked desperately at James for help. Something we've definitely talked about, he said firmly, but we're taking things one step at a time. Smart approach. Arthur nodded sagely. Build the foundation first, then expand the family. Exactly, James agreed, which is why we should probably head out soon. Big day tomorrow. Lots to discuss privately. Emma could have kissed him for the save, except that would just add more fuel to the family's romantic fire. Of course, Eleanor clapped her hands together. You two lovebirds need your alone time. But Emma, darling, don't forget, we're expecting you for Sunday dinner this week. It's a Wentworth tradition. Every Sunday at 2, and everyone brings a dish to share. What should I bring? Emma asked automatically. Surprise us. Eleanor beamed. I'm sure whatever you make will be wonderful. As they finally started making their way toward the exit, saying goodbye to what felt like hundreds of relatives, Emma's head was spinning with all the commitments she'd somehow made. Sunday dinner, Thanksgiving hosting, golf tournaments, book clubs, wedding planning. James, she whispered as they waited for the valet to bring his car around. I think I'm in way over my head. Welcome to my world, he murmured back. But hey, at least you handled it better than Olivia. Olivia probably had the right idea running away. Maybe. But she missed out on some pretty amazing people. Emma looked back through the hotel's glass doors at the Wentworth family, still celebrating and laughing together, and felt that dangerous, warm feeling again. Maybe James was right. Maybe they were pretty amazing. And maybe that was exactly the problem. The next morning, Emma woke up in her cramped studio apartment to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and the horrifying realization that she was supposed to host Thanksgiving dinner for approximately 30 people in a space that barely fit her futon and a mini fridge. Her phone buzzed again, another text from an unknown number. Hi, Emma, this is Sophia, James's cousin. So excited you're going to be my maid of honor. Can we meet for brunch this weekend to discuss dress colors? I'm thinking sage green or dusty rose. Zoxo, Emma groaned and pulled her pillow over her head. This was officially a disaster of epic proportions. Her phone rang again, James's name flashing on the screen. Please tell me you're calling to say this was all an elaborate dream, she answered without preamble. Good morning to you too, sunshine. James's amused voice came through clearly, and unfortunately, it was very real. I woke up to 12 voicemails from various family members, all asking for your contact information so they can start including you in group chats. Group chats? Emma sat up in horror. How many group chats do you people have? Last count? 14. There's one for general family updates, one for holiday planning, one for sharing photos, one specifically for discussing Uncle Arthur's weekly golf scores, one for stop, just stop. Emma rubbed her temples. James, we need to end this today. I can't keep track of all the lies I told last night. And your family is planning our entire future together. Your Aunt Elizabeth texted me at 6 a.m. about cake tastings. What did you tell her? Nothing yet. I'm too terrified to respond to anyone. Emma started pacing her tiny apartment, which took exactly 4 steps in each direction. Your cousin Daniel called and left a voicemail about scheduling an appointment with his diamond guy. Ben sent me a friend request on some gaming platform I've never heard of. And your grandmother? Emma paused dramatically. What about Grandma Eleanor? She wants to take me shopping for appropriate engagement attire this afternoon. Apparently, my wardrobe needs expanding now that I'm going to be a Wentworth. James was quiet for a moment. You know what? Maybe we should just tell them the truth. No, you want to tell them the truth after I've committed to hosting Thanksgiving dinner and being a maid of honor and joining the family book club. You joined the book club? They're reading Pride and Prejudice next month. I love that book. I got excited and volunteered to lead the discussion. Emma flopped back down on her futon. I'm a terrible person, James. I'm lying to the sweetest family in America, and part of me is actually enjoying it. What do you mean? Emma hesitated. She'd been trying not to examine this too closely, but the truth was complicated. Your family is wonderful. My own family consists of my workaholic mother, who I talk to twice a year, and a father who sends generic birthday cards from whatever country he's currently working in. Last night was the first time I've ever been to a family gathering where people actually seem to like each other. Emma. And they were so welcoming. Your Aunt Claire spent 20 minutes showing me photos of her kids' soccer games. Uncle Edward told me embarrassing stories about his college roommate, who's apparently running for city council now. Even Great-Uncle Arthur invited me to his weekly poker game, which apparently no outsiders are ever invited to. Arthur invited you to poker night? James sounded genuinely surprised. He's never invited anyone outside the family to poker night, not even my ex-wife. You were married? Emma nearly dropped the phone. Briefly. Very briefly. College mistake that lasted 8 months. James's voice got quieter. The point is, Arthur doesn't extend poker invitations lightly. That's basically family initiation, which makes this whole situation even worse. Emma wailed. I'm going to have to break all their hearts when the truth comes out. Ben's going to think I abandoned him. Your grandmother is going to have another heart episode. Sophia's going to be short, one maid of honor. Her phone started ringing with an incoming call. James's name was still on the line. But another call was coming through. Someone else is calling, she told James. Who? Unknown number. I'm afraid to answer it. Answer it. I'll stay on the line. Emma switched to the new call with shaking hands. Hello, Emma Thompson. A bright, cheerful voice practically shouted through the phone. This is Patricia Carter from Manhattan Society Weekly. I understand congratulations are in order. Emma's blood turned to ice. I'm sorry. Who is this? Patricia Carter, senior correspondent for Manhattan's premier society publication. We received the most delicious tip about a surprise engagement at the Meridian Hotel last night. James Wentworth III and lifestyle journalist Emma Thompson. This is absolutely perfect. A real-life Cinderella story. We'd love to feature you both in our next issue. Emma looked around her apartment wildly, as if James might somehow materialize to help her. Now, I understand you work in journalism too, so you know how these things go. We'll need photos, of course engagement photos. Some candid shots of the happy couple, maybe something at his penthouse. Our photographer could meet you there this afternoon. This afternoon isn't good for O. And we'll want the exclusive on the proposal story. Our readers are absolutely dying to know how James popped the question. Was it romantic? Spontaneous? Did he get down on one knee? Did you suspect it was coming? Emma realized she was hyperventilating. James was still on the other line, but she couldn't switch back without hanging up on Patricia. And hanging up on a reporter would look incredibly suspicious. The proposal was very private. She managed, Of course, young love. But surely you can share some details. Our readers eat up these romance stories. And James is such a catch. Handsome, wealthy, eligible bachelor finally off the market. There must have been quite a proposal story. Can I call you back? I'm actually in the middle of something right now. Absolutely. But don't wait too long, darling. News like this travels fast in our circles, and we'd hate for another publication to scoop us on the story of the year. I'll text you my direct number. Patricia hung up, and Emma immediately switched back to James, who was saying her name repeatedly. Emma? Emma? What happened? You've been gone for 5 minutes. Manhattan Society Weekly, she said faintly. They want an exclusive interview and photos at your penthouse this afternoon. The line went completely silent. James, I'm here. I'm just processing. How did they find out? How do reporters already know about this? Someone at the wedding must have tipped them off or posted something on social media. James sounded like he was pacing, too. This is not good. Not good. Not good. James, this is catastrophic. If this story runs, everyone will know it's fake. I'll be exposed as a fraud. You'll look like an idiot. Your family will be humiliated, and my career will be over. Okay, let's think this through logically. What exactly did she ask? Everything. Proposal details, engagement photos, an interview about our relationship. She wants to meet at your penthouse this afternoon for a photo shoot. My penthouse that you've never seen. Your penthouse that I've never seen. To discuss our romantic proposal that never happened, while wearing an engagement ring that doesn't exist. James was quiet for a long moment. What if we give them just enough to make it believable, but not enough for them to dig deeper? Are you insane? Think about it. If we refuse the interview entirely, that looks suspicious. But if we do a brief, controlled interview with limited photos, we can control the narrative. Control the narrative. Emma's voice pitched higher. James, I'm a lifestyle journalist. I know how these interviews work. They're going to ask follow-up questions, want details, probe for inconsistencies. And what happens when they fact-check the story? What happens when they call my references and discover I was covering a completely different wedding yesterday? We'll figure it out. You're smart. You think quickly. You're great at improvising. I'm great at improvising small talk at parties, not elaborate lies that will be published in a major magazine. Her phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. Now what? She muttered, looking at her screen. Your cousin Claire wants to know if I'm free for a spa day on Saturday. Sophia sent me 17 photos of bridesmaid dresses. Ben wants to know if I can teach him how to make cookies this weekend. And your grandmother? Emma paused, reading Eleanor's text. Your grandmother wants to introduce me to her pastor because she thinks we should start discussing the wedding ceremony details. Her pastor, Father O'Connor apparently, she's already texted him about us, and he's absolutely delighted to meet the future Mrs. Wentworth. Emma was spiraling now. James. This has gone from a simple family dinner lie to involving clergy. What if he wants to counsel us? What if he starts asking about our spiritual compatibility and our plans for raising children in the faith? Father O'Connor is actually really laid back. He'll probably just want to discuss logistics. Logistics? Emma shrieked. James, there are no logistics because there's no wedding. Her building's buzzer rang, echoing through her tiny apartment. Emma and James both fell silent. Are you expecting someone? He asked. No. Emma crept toward her window and peered down at the street. There's a black Mercedes parked outside with a driver, and someone's getting out. What do they look like? Elegant woman, probably 60 seconds, carrying what looks like shopping bags and, oh no, no, no. What? James, I think your grandmother is here. The buzzer rang again, more insistently this time. Then Emma's phone rang. Unknown number again. Emma, darling. Eleanor's voice came through cheerfully. I'm downstairs. I brought coffee and pastries, and I thought we could have a little girl talk before our shopping trip. Emma looked around her disaster of an apartment, clothes everywhere, dirty dishes in the sink, her bed unmade, magazines and newspapers scattered across every surface, and absolutely nothing that suggested a person who was ready to marry into one of Manhattan's most prominent families. Tell her you'll be right down, James said urgently. I'm on my way over. You're coming here. We're about to get a crash course in crisis management. And Emma? Yeah, whatever you do, don't let her come upstairs. Emma looked at her apartment again, all 300 square feet of absolute chaos, and realized that was going to be easier said than done. Emma. Eleanor's voice came through the intercom again. Is everything all right, dear? Should I come up? No, Emma practically shouted into the intercom. I mean, no thank you. I'll be right down. Just give me one tiny second. She looked at herself in the mirror, hair everywhere, wearing yesterday's clothes, no makeup, and approximately 30 seconds to transform herself into someone who looked like appropriate fiancé material. This was about to be the performance of her lifetime, and she was pretty sure she was about to blow it spectacularly. But as she grabbed her purse and headed for the door, Emma realized something that surprised her. Despite the panic and the lies and the impossible situation, she was actually excited to see Eleanor again, which was either really sweet or a sign that she was losing her mind completely, probably both. Emma managed to make it downstairs in record time, having thrown on clean clothes and brushed her teeth, while simultaneously trying to shove the worst of her apartment's chaos into closets and under furniture. She found Eleanor waiting on the sidewalk beside a sleek black Mercedes, looking absolutely radiant in a cream-colored coat and holding 2 coffee cups and a pastry box from what appeared to be Manhattan's most expensive bakery. There's my beautiful future granddaughter, Eleanor beamed, immediately pulling Emma into a warm hug that smelled like expensive perfume and genuine affection. I hope you don't mind me surprising you like this, but I was so excited about our shopping trip that I couldn't wait until this afternoon. Not at all, Emma said, accepting the coffee gratefully and trying not to think about the disaster waiting upstairs. This is so thoughtful of you. I brought those divine almond croissants from Levain, Eleanor continued, opening the pastry box to reveal what looked like bakery perfection. James mentioned you have a sweet tooth. When did he mention that? Emma asked, genuinely curious since she'd never told James any such thing. Last night, when he was talking about how you always steal bites of his dessert at restaurants, he said it was one of the things he found most endearing about you. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with romantic satisfaction. He couldn't stop talking about your little quirks, actually. The way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking, How you gesture with your hands when you get excited about something. How you always order coffee with extra foam because you like to make little designs with the cinnamon. Emma nearly choked on her coffee. James had been paying remarkably close attention for someone who'd known her less than 24 hours. And more importantly, he'd been making up intimate details about their fake relationship that were surprisingly accurate. She did scrunch her nose when thinking, and she did gesture constantly, and she absolutely would order coffee with extra foam if she could afford fancy coffee drinks. He's very observant, she managed. That's what makes him such a good businessman, Eleanor agreed proudly, but more importantly, it's what's going to make him a wonderful husband. He notices the little things that matter. Before Emma could figure out how to respond to that loaded statement, James himself appeared around the corner, slightly out of breath, and looking uncharacteristically flustered. He was wearing dark jeans and a navy sweater instead of his usual business attire, and somehow the casual look made him even more attractive. "Grandma, there you are," he said, kissing Eleanor on the cheek before turning to Emma with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I was looking for you both. Perfect timing." Eleanor clapped her hands together. "I was just telling Emma about your sweet observations from last night. You two are absolutely adorable together." James and Emma exchanged a quick glance that somehow communicated both panic and amusement simultaneously. "Actually, Grandma," James said carefully, "Emma and I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, darling. What is it?" Emma watched James take a deep breath, and she realized he was actually going to tell Eleanor the truth right here on the sidewalk, with traffic rushing past and strangers walking around them. Her heart started racing, partly from anxiety about Eleanor's reaction, partly from relief that this impossible charade was finally going to end, and partly from something else she didn't want to examine too closely. "The thing is," James began, "last night wasn't exactly— Excuse me, are you Emma Thompson?" A woman with a professional camera and a press badge interrupted them, approaching from across the street. "I'm Jennifer Lee from Manhattan Society Weekly. Patricia Carter sent me to get some candid shots of the happy couple." All three of them turned to stare at the photographer, who was already raising her camera. "Just act natural," Jennifer called out cheerfully. "These impromptu moments make the best shots." "No photos," James said firmly, stepping protectively in front of Emma. "Oh, come now," Eleanor chided gently. "It's just a few pictures, and you both look wonderful. Emma, that sweater brings out your eyes beautifully. Mrs. Wentworth, if I could get you in a shot with the couple." Jennifer was already clicking away. "This is perfect. 3 generations of Wentworth women." "I'm not actually—" Emma started to protest. "She's not actually comfortable with photographers yet." James finished smoothly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We're very private people." "But these will be such lovely engagement photos," Eleanor protested. "Emma, dear, you're going to want to remember this moment forever." And that's when it hit Emma like a freight train. She actually did want to remember this moment, standing here with James's arm around her, Eleanor beaming at them both with genuine love and excitement, the morning sun making everything look golden and perfect, despite all the lies and chaos. This felt more real and wonderful than anything she'd experienced in years. "You know what?" she said impulsively. "Maybe just 1 or 2 photos." James looked at her in surprise. But she was already stepping closer to him, letting herself relax into his embrace. Eleanor immediately moved to stand beside them, and Jennifer started snapping pictures enthusiastically. "Beautiful. Now, maybe one with just the couple." "James, put your hand on her face. Yes, like that. Emma, look up at him like he just said something romantic." Emma looked up at James, who was gazing down at her with an expression of such genuine tenderness that she forgot they were pretending. For just a moment, standing there in the morning sunlight with his hand cupping her cheek and his blue eyes focused entirely on her, everything else faded away. She could see tiny flecks of gold in his irises, could feel the warmth of his palm against her skin, could smell that intoxicating combination of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. "Perfect," Jennifer exclaimed. "That's exactly the kind of authentic emotion our readers love to see. The way you two look at each other is absolutely magical." The spell was broken, and Emma stepped back, suddenly aware of what had just happened. She'd gotten completely lost in pretending, and from the look on James's face a mixture of surprise and something deeper. So had he. "I think that's enough photos for now," James said quietly, his voice slightly rough. "Of course," Jennifer agreed, checking her camera display. "These are gorgeous shots. Patricia is going to be absolutely thrilled. The lighting is perfect, and the chemistry between you two is incredible. We'll be in touch about the full interview and feature story." As Jennifer walked away, already scrolling through the photos on her camera, Eleanor turned to them with the biggest smile Emma had ever seen. "You two are absolutely magical together," she said warmly. "I've never seen James look at anyone the way he looks at you, Emma. And sweetheart, you're positively glowing with happiness." "Grandma," James started again, running a hand through his hair, "we really need to tell you something." "Actually," Emma interrupted, surprising herself, "maybe we could sit down somewhere first. This conversation might take a while, and it's important." James looked at her questioningly, but Eleanor was already nodding enthusiastically. "Wonderful idea. There's a lovely little cafe just around the corner, HRE's Bistro. They have the most divine French pastries and excellent coffee. We can have a proper conversation over a civilized breakfast." As they walked the short distance to the cafe, Emma tried to sort through her swirling emotions. She'd been ready to confess everything and end this charade, but something about that moment with the photographer had changed things fundamentally. The way James had looked at her, not like he was acting, but like he was seeing something wonderful, had made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with panic and everything to do with possibility. The cafe Eleanor led them to was exactly the kind of place Emma would have chosen herself, cozy and warm with exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and the rich scents of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. French jazz played softly in the background, and morning sunlight streamed through large windows overlooking a small garden courtyard. They settled into a corner booth, upholstered in worn burgundy leather, with Eleanor sliding in across from Emma and James. "Now," Eleanor said, folding her hands on the scarred wooden table, "what did you want to tell me, dears?" Emma looked at James, who seemed to be having his own internal struggle. His jaw was tight, and he kept glancing between her and his grandmother, as if calculating the potential damage of what they were about to reveal. Finally, he spoke. "The truth is, Grandma, last night wasn't exactly what it seemed." Eleanor's expression grew concerned, her perfectly styled eyebrows drawing together. "What do you mean, dear?" "I mean," James continued, reaching for Emma's hand across the table in what felt like both a supportive gesture and an anchor to steady himself. "Emma and I haven't actually been dating." "Oh." Eleanor's eyebrows rose in surprise, but not the kind of shocked, horrified surprise Emma had been dreading. "You mean it really was love at first sight?" "How absolutely romantic." "Not exactly," Emma said gently, feeling James's thumb brush across her knuckles in an unconsciously comforting gesture. "I mean, we literally just met last night at the wedding." Eleanor blinked several times, clearly processing this information. "But you seem so natural together, so comfortable and in sync. And James, you knew so much about her preferences and habits. I may have improvised some of those details," James admitted sheepishly, his ears turning slightly red, "and Emma was just trying to be polite when you mistook her for my girlfriend." "So, you're not engaged? Not even dating?" "No," they said simultaneously, and Emma was surprised by how much that simple word seemed to disappoint her. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her perfectly manicured hands, and Emma felt her heart breaking at the disappointment that was surely coming. She'd grown genuinely fond of this elegant, warm-hearted woman in less than 24 hours, and the thought of crushing her romantic hopes was almost unbearable. But when Eleanor finally spoke, her voice was surprisingly calm and thoughtful. "I see. So, last night was all an elaborate performance." "I'm so sorry," Emma said earnestly, leaning forward in her urgency to explain. "I never meant for it to go so far. You were all so welcoming and wonderful, and I got caught up in how lovely your family is. Before I knew it, I'd promised to host Thanksgiving dinner and join the book club and learn to play golf. And you agreed to be Sophia's maid of honor?" Eleanor added with a small, knowing smile. "Yes, and I'm so sorry about that too. She's going to hate me when she finds out, and Ben's going to be so disappointed about the cookies and the baseball games, and Uncle Arthur invited me to poker night." Emma realized she was rambling and took a shaky breath. "Everyone's going to feel so betrayed." "Emma," Eleanor interrupted gently, reaching across the table to cover her free hand. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course. How did you feel last night when you were with our family? I mean, was it all just acting for you?" Emma hesitated because the honest answer was complicated and vulnerable and might make things worse. But looking into Eleanor's kind, intelligent eyes, she realized that this woman deserved nothing less than complete honesty. "No," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't all acting. Your family is incredible. You're all so warm and funny and genuinely interested in each other's lives. You ask questions because you actually care about the answers. You celebrate each other's successes and support each other through difficulties. Being included in that, even temporarily, felt amazing. She paused, trying to find the right words to explain something she'd never really articulated before. I haven't had a real family gathering in years, she continued. My parents divorced when I was 15, and they both threw themselves into their careers afterward. My mom's a corporate lawyer who works 80-hour weeks, and my dad's a geology consultant who spends 10 months a year traveling to remote locations. Our idea of family time is a 30-minute phone call every few months where we catch up on the basics. Eleanor's expression had grown increasingly sympathetic as Emma spoke. Last night was probably the most fun I've had in months, Emma admitted, maybe years. Watching Arthur tell stories, seeing how proud Claire was of her children's accomplishments, dancing with James while everyone cheered us on, having Ben get excited about teaching me video games. It felt like being part of something real and special. And how do you feel about James specifically? Eleanor asked, her eyes twinkling with something that might have been hope. Emma glanced at James, who was watching her intently with an expression she couldn't quite read. His blue eyes were focused entirely on her face, as if her answer was the most important thing he'd ever heard. She began, then stopped, unsure how honest she should be. He's wonderful, funny, and intelligent, and clearly devoted to all of you. He's also incredibly kind. The way he handled the whole situation last night, protecting me from embarrassment while still being honest about his motivations. Any woman would be incredibly lucky to be with him. But, Eleanor prompted gently, but we barely know each other, Emma said. Though even as she said it, it felt like a weak protest. This whole situation started as a misunderstanding that spiraled completely out of control. I'm not sure you can build anything real on that kind of foundation. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully, then turned to James. And what about you, dear? How do you feel about Emma? James was quiet for a moment, and Emma found herself holding her breath, waiting for his answer. The cafe seemed to fade around them, the soft jazz, the murmur of other conversations, the clink of coffee cups and silverware, until it felt like they were in a private bubble of anticipation. I think, he said slowly, his voice steady but intense, that meeting Emma was the best accident that's ever happened to me. Emma's heart skipped a beat. James, I mean it, he continued, turning to face her fully, his hand tightening around hers. In one evening, you charmed my entire family, and they're not easily charmed. Believe me, you danced with me like you'd been doing it your whole life, even though you insisted you were going to destroy my feet. You listened to Arthur's embarrassing stories about my childhood with genuine interest, and made him feel like the most entertaining person in the room. He paused, his thumb tracing patterns across her knuckles that sent little sparks of electricity up her arm. You promised Ben you'd teach him to make cookies and take him to Yankees games, and you meant it. I could see it in your face. You made my stepmother feel included by asking about her floral design business. Even though you clearly didn't know anything about flowers, you somehow made everyone feel special and appreciated just by being yourself. But I was pretending to be someone else, Emma protested weakly. Someone sophisticated and put together and worthy of being part of your world. No, you weren't, James said firmly. You were being exactly yourself, kind, genuine, a little clumsy, completely unpretentious. The woman who spilled champagne on my tuxedo and then tried to clean it up with cocktail napkins is the same woman who spent 20 minutes looking at photos of Claire's children because she could see how proud Claire was of them. He leaned closer, his voice growing more intense. Emma, I've dated plenty of women who were sophisticated and put together, women who knew exactly which fork to use for each course, who never spilled anything, who always said the right thing at the right time. And you know what? They were boring, predictable, safe. And I'm not safe? Emma asked, not sure whether to be offended or flattered. You're the opposite of safe, James said, and his smile was soft and a little amazed. You're spontaneous and real, and completely yourself. Even when you're terrified, you make me laugh until my sides hurt. You challenge me without even trying. And when you look at me, I feel like the person I want to be, instead of just the person I think I should be. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever described her that way before, like she was something wonderful, instead of something that needed to be improved or toned down. But we lied to everyone, she whispered. We've been lying this whole time. About being engaged, yes, James agreed. But not about anything that actually matters, not about enjoying each other's company, or finding each other interesting, or feeling comfortable together. Eleanor had been listening to this exchange with growing delight, and now she clapped her hands together softly, making them both look at her. I have an idea, she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Grandma," James said warningly, clearly recognizing that tone, "what if you stopped lying about being engaged and started being honest about everything else?" "What do you mean?" Emma asked, though her heart was already racing with possibility. "I mean, what if you two went on an actual date? What if you got to know each other properly without the pressure of a fake engagement, but with the possibility of something real developing naturally?" Emma and James stared at each other across the table. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and wonderful. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and being asked to jump, not knowing if there was water below or solid ground. "The family is going to be so disappointed," Emma said quietly. "They'll feel betrayed. They'll think I was making fun of them. The family is going to be thrilled," Eleanor corrected firmly. "Do you honestly think we care whether you met last week or last night? What matters is how you feel about each other now and what you might feel about each other in the future." "But what about all the plans?" Emma asked, anxiety creeping back into her voice. "The wedding venue discussions and the engagement party ideas and all those commitments I made. There were no actual deposits or bookings." Eleanor laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Emma, dear, I may be enthusiastic about romance, but I'm not completely impractical. I was just excited about the possibility of planning something wonderful for you both." "And Sophia's wedding?" Emma pressed. "I promised to be her maid of honor." "Sophia has 6 sisters and 12 female cousins," Eleanor said practically. "She'll survive losing one maid of honor, especially if it means potentially gaining a sister-in-law through more traditional and honest means." "What about Ben?" Emma asked. "He's going to be so disappointed about the cookies and the baseball games." "Who says you can't still make cookies with Ben?" Eleanor asked with a mischievous smile. "And take him to baseball games?" Children don't care about the technical details of adult relationships. They care about whether the adults in their lives follow through on their promises. James was still looking at Emma intently, as if he was trying to read her thoughts. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Would you maybe want to try this for real? Starting with an actual first date where we tell each other the complete truth about everything." Emma felt her heart racing again, but this time it wasn't from panic. It was from hope and excitement in the terrifying, wonderful possibility that this could actually work. "You really want to date me?" she asked, needing to hear it again. "Even after I crashed your cousin's wedding and lied to your entire family and created this massive charade? Especially after you crashed my cousin's wedding and lied to my entire family," James said, his grin widening. "It was the most interesting and entertaining night I've had in years, possibly ever." "But what about Manhattan Society Weekly?" "Jennifer's photos are probably already being processed for tomorrow's edition. We'll call Patricia Carter and tell her the truth," James said confidently. "Think about it. A real love story is actually much better than a fake engagement for their readership. Billionaire meets his match. When journalist crashes wrong wedding, that's a headline that practically writes itself. Plus," Eleanor added with obvious delight, "it's a much better story for the family, too. Instead of celebrating a relationship that was built on deception, we get to watch a real romance develop from the very beginning. That's infinitely more exciting if you ask me." Emma looked back and forth between James and Eleanor, still hardly believing this was happening. The morning sunlight streaming through the cafe windows seemed brighter somehow, and the sounds of other patrons chatting and laughing felt like a cheerful soundtrack to this surreal conversation. "You're both really okay with this?" she asked one more time. "With starting over and doing this the right way?" "More than okay," James said earnestly, both of his hands now covering hers on the table. "Emma, I haven't been this excited about anything in years. You make me laugh. You challenge me to be better. You somehow managed to charm my entire family in one evening, which, trust me, is no small feat. And when you look at me, I feel possibilities I'd forgotten existed. Plus," Eleanor added with a mischievous smile, "Arthur still wants you at poker night, and I'd hate to disappoint him. He's already been bragging to his golf buddies about his new poker protege." Emma started laughing, and once she started, she couldn't stop. The relief, the happiness, the sheer absurdity of the whole situation, it all bubbled up into genuine, joyful laughter that attracted amused glances from other cafe patrons. "Okay," she said finally, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Okay, yes, I would absolutely love to go on an actual date with you, James Wentworth." "Really?" He looked almost surprised by her enthusiastic agreement. "Really, but I have some conditions." "Name them," he said immediately. "First, no more lies to your family about anything. Complete honesty from here on out." "Agreed." "Second, we take this slow. No pressure. No expectations beyond enjoying each other's company. Just two people getting to know each other properly. Absolutely. Third, I'm still going to that poker game with Arthur, Emma said firmly. I've never been invited to an exclusive family poker night, and I'm not missing that opportunity. James laughed. Arthur's going to be over the moon. What else? Fourth, I really do want to learn how to make cookies with Ben. I meant that promise, even if everything else was fake. Ben's going to be thrilled, Eleanor said warmly. He's been asking about cookie lessons since he woke up this morning. And finally, Emma said, suddenly feeling shy, I'd like to meet Father O'Connor properly, not as your fake fiancé, but as someone who's interested in understanding what's important to your family. Eleanor's face lit up like Christmas morning. Oh, my dear girl, Father O'Connor is going to adore you. He has such a wonderful sense of humor, and he's been looking forward to meeting you ever since I told him about your situation. He knows the truth? Emma asked in surprise. Father O'Connor has been counseling our family for over 20 years, Eleanor said with a knowing smile. He took one look at the photos from last night and called me this morning to ask if I needed any advice about handling young people who get themselves into complicated romantic situations. James groaned. He saw right through us. Darling, the man has married half the couples in Manhattan and counseled the other half through their relationship difficulties. He knows the difference between genuine affection and a performance. Eleanor patted James's hand affectionately. He said, and I quote, "Those two young people look at each other like they've discovered something precious, even if they don't quite know what to do with it yet." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. He said that? He also said he'd be happy to have coffee with you both, separately or together, whatever you prefer, to discuss relationships and faith and anything else that might be on your minds. No pressure, no judgment, just conversation. Eleanor stood up from the table, still smiling broadly. Well, I'll leave you two to figure out the details of your first real date. I have some very exciting phone calls to make. What kind of phone calls? James asked suspiciously. The kind where I tell the family that instead of celebrating a fake engagement, we're going to be watching a genuine romance unfold from the very beginning, Eleanor said cheerfully, which is infinitely more romantic and exciting than any surprise engagement could ever be. As Eleanor gathered her purse and coat, she leaned down to kiss both of them on the cheek. For what it's worth, she said softly, I think you two are going to be absolutely wonderful together. Sometimes the best love stories start with the most unexpected circumstances. After Eleanor left the cafe, practically glowing with happiness and romantic satisfaction, Emma and James sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Are you sure about this? Emma asked quietly, needing one final confirmation. I mean, really, truly sure? Because once we call that reporter and tell your family the complete truth, there's no going back to our separate normal lives. James reached across the table and took both of her hands in his blue eyes serious and intent. Emma, I haven't wanted to go back to my normal life since the moment you spilled champagne on my tuxedo and then tried to clean it up with cocktail napkins. My normal life was predictable and efficient and completely boring. You've made everything complicated and chaotic and absolutely wonderful. Even though I'm completely wrong for you on paper? Emma asked, voicing one of her deepest insecurities. I'm a broke freelance journalist who lives in a studio apartment the size of most people's closets and apparently crashes society weddings for work, especially because you're completely wrong for me on paper, James said firmly. Do you know how many women I've dated who were exactly right for me on paper? They had the right educational background, the right social connections, the right career prospects, and the right opinions about everything. And they were boring as anything, he said with a laugh, perfectly pleasant, completely appropriate, and utterly forgettable. None of them ever made me laugh until my sides hurt or challenged me to think about things differently or made me want to be more interesting just to keep up with them. I make you want to be more interesting? Emma asked, surprised by the compliment. You make me want to be worthy of that look you get when you're really listening to someone, James said seriously. Like you're genuinely fascinated by what they're saying, even if it's Arthur telling the same golf story for the 100th time. Emma felt that fluttery feeling in her chest again, but this time she didn't try to push it away or analyze it. This time she just let herself enjoy it. Okay then, she said, squeezing his hands, let's find out what happens when we do this the right way. So, James said, his eyes twinkling with that familiar mischief that had gotten them into this situation in the first place, tonight at 7, I'll pick you up for our first official, completely honest date. Where are you planning to take me? Somewhere completely normal and non-intimidating where we can talk without photographers or family members or social media interruptions, James promised, I want to hear about all the disastrous assignments that led you to crash my cousin's wedding, and I owe you some embarrassing stories about my tragic teenage poetry phase. You wrote teenage poetry? Terrible. Melodramatic teenage poetry. James confirmed with a rueful smile. There was a particularly dark period where I rhymed love with dove in every single poem, and I thought using big words would make me sound profound. Oh, this is going to be good. Now I definitely have to hear some examples. Only if you promise to share some of your own embarrassing teenage moments. James bargained. Deal, Emma agreed, though I should warn you. I went through a phase where I thought I was going to be a famous investigative reporter, so I spent 6 months investigating whether the cafeteria food at my high school was actually edible. And what did you discover? That the mystery meat was probably better left a mystery, and that asking too many questions about school lunch ingredients can get you banned from the cafeteria for a week. James laughed. See, you've been getting into trouble with your investigative instincts for years. Last night was just the natural progression. As they prepared to leave the cafe, gathering their coats and finishing the last of their coffee, Emma realized she felt lighter and happier than she had in months, maybe years. The terrifying uncertainty of the fake engagement was over, but it had been replaced by something even better, genuine possibility. James, she said as they stood to leave, can I tell you something? Anything? Yesterday morning, the most exciting thing in my life was getting a questionable tip about a celebrity wedding. Today, I'm about to go on a date with a man who makes me laugh and who looks at me like I'm the most interesting person in the world. Plus, I've been adopted by the most wonderful family I've ever met, and I have poker night and cookie-making sessions to look forward to. James stopped walking and turned to face her fully, right there in the middle of the cafe, with other patrons chatting around them and morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Emma Thompson, he said seriously, reaching up to tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear. You turned my entire world upside down in the space of one evening. You made me remember what it feels like to be surprised and delighted and completely charmed by someone, even though I created a massive chaotic mess. Because you created a massive chaotic mess, he corrected. Anyone can follow the rules and do things the proper way. It takes someone really special to accidentally create something magical. They walked out of the cafe together, and as they stepped onto the busy Manhattan sidewalk, James's phone immediately started buzzing with text messages. Let me guess, Emma said. Family group chats. James glanced at his phone and grinned. Uncle Edward wants to know if he should cancel the country club reservation he never actually made. Aunt Claire is asking whether she should return the engagement gift she hasn't bought yet. And Ben? James's expression softened as he read the message. Ben wants to know if you're still going to teach him how to make cookies. Even though you're not going to be his aunt right away. What should I tell him? Tell him that cookie lessons are definitely still happening and that maybe he can help us figure out this whole relationship thing, since he's clearly smarter than both of us. Emma laughed. He probably is. Kids usually are when it comes to the important stuff. They walked slowly down the sidewalk, in no particular hurry to end this conversation or this moment. The city hummed around them, cars honking, people talking, the distant sound of construction and sirens, but it all felt like background music to something important happening between them. So, Emma said, as they paused at a crosswalk, 7 tonight. Should I dress up, dress down, prepare for more chaos? Just be yourself, James said, then paused. Actually, scratch that. Be the version of yourself that shows up to family dinners and promises to teach 9-year-olds how to bake and crashes weddings because she's following a story. So, myself, but maybe with slightly better planning skills. Your planning skills are perfect exactly as they are, James assured her. After all, they led you to me. The crosswalk light changed, but neither of them moved across the street. They just stood there looking at each other, both of them grinning like teenagers who just discovered something wonderful. James, Emma said suddenly, there's something else I should probably tell you before tonight. What's that? I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing when it comes to relationships. My longest relationship lasted 4 months, and it ended when he told me I was too intense about my work. Well, James said, stepping closer, I have no idea what I'm doing either. My longest relationship was my brief marriage, which ended when she told me I was emotionally unavailable and married to my business. So, we're both relationship disasters. Complete disasters, James confirmed, which probably means we'll either crash and burn spectacularly or figure out something amazing together. Those are really the only 2 options with us. James grinned. Definitely. Just then, Emma's phone rang. Patricia Carter's name flashing on the screen. The reporter, she said, showing James the phone. Answer it, he said. Let's start this honesty thing right now. Emma took a deep breath and answered the call. Patricia, hi. Actually, I'm so glad you called. James and I have something we need to tell you about the story. Oh, wonderful. I hope you've decided to do the full feature. Our readers are going to eat this up. Actually, Emma said, looking at James for encouragement, the story is a little different than we originally let on. We're not actually engaged yet. There was a pause. I'm sorry. What? We just met last night at the wedding. The engagement was a misunderstanding that got out of hand. But we're going on our first real date tonight. So, you're telling me, Patricia said slowly, that instead of a surprise engagement story, I have a meet-cute love story that's happening in real time. That's exactly what you have, Emma confirmed, with a billionaire businessman and a journalist who crashed the wrong wedding. Yes. There was another pause. And then Patricia started laughing. Honey, that is so much better than an engagement story. That's a romantic comedy waiting to happen. Can we do a follow-up interview after your first date? Our readers are going to be absolutely obsessed with this story. We'll think about it, Emma said diplomatically. But maybe let's see how the first date goes before we plan any more magazine features. Fair enough, but I'm keeping Jennifer's photos from this morning. They're absolutely gorgeous, and they'll be perfect for the real story. Love at first crash, when a journalist met her match at the wrong wedding. How does that sound? After Emma hung up, she and James looked at each other and burst into laughter. Well, James said, I think we just officially became Manhattan's most talked about new couple. Is that a good thing or a terrifying thing? With you, probably both. They finally crossed the street and found themselves walking through Central Park, where the late morning sun was filtering through the trees, and families were enjoying the weekend with picnics and games. It felt peaceful and normal and perfectly right. You know, Emma said as they found an empty bench overlooking the reservoir, I keep waiting for reality to hit. For this to feel like a mistake or a crazy impulse we're both going to regret, James settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. And instead, it feels like the first thing that's made complete sense in a long time. She turned to face him fully. Is that crazy? If it is, then we're both crazy, James said softly, because sitting here with you feels more right than anything I've done in years. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching joggers and dog walkers and families pass by. The city sounds faded to a gentle background hum, and Emma found herself thinking about how different her life had been just 24 hours ago. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Anything. What made you go along with the whole fake engagement thing last night? I mean, you could have just corrected your grandmother immediately and saved us both a lot of trouble. James considered this for a moment. Honestly, at first it was just about making Grandma Eleanor happy. She's been so worried about me being alone, and seeing her light up like that. He shrugged. But then, as the evening went on, I realized I was having more fun than I'd had in months. You were so genuine and warm with everyone, and you seemed to actually enjoy being there. I did enjoy it more than I wanted to admit. And there was something else, James continued, his voice getting quieter. When we were dancing and you were telling me about wanting to be an investigative journalist, you got this look on your face, like you were remembering a dream you'd put aside. You noticed that? I notice everything about you, he said simply. It's like you've turned up the brightness on everything around me. Colors seem more vivid. Conversations are more interesting. Even my family's chaos feels more entertaining. Emma felt her heart skip again. James, I know it sounds ridiculous, he said quickly. We've known each other less than 24 hours. By all reasonable standards, this is completely insane. It is completely insane. Emma agreed. And also wonderful and terrifying and exciting. So, what do we do with that? I guess we find out, she said. Then surprised herself by reaching for his hand, one honest date at a time. James's fingers intertwined with hers, and the simple contact sent warmth shooting up her arm and straight to her heart. Speaking of which, he said, checking his watch, I should probably let you get home and prepare for tonight, unless you want to spend the entire day together, in which case I'm completely fine with that, too. Emma laughed. As tempting as that sounds, I should probably go call my friend Rachel and tell her that her borrowed dress helped me accidentally find the man of my dreams. The man of your dreams? James's eyebrows rose with amusement. Too much? Emma felt her cheeks heat up. Not nearly enough, he said seriously, then stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on, dream girl. Let me walk you home. The walk back to Emma's apartment building took much longer than it should have, mostly because they kept stopping to continue their conversation. They discussed everything from favorite books, to travel dreams, to embarrassing childhood memories, and Emma found herself amazed by how easy it was to talk to him. "This is me," she said as they reached her building's entrance, suddenly feeling nervous about the evening ahead. "This is charming," James said, looking up at the pre-war brownstone. "Very you. You haven't seen the inside. It's basically a closet with delusions of grandeur." "I can't wait to see it properly," James said. Then caught her surprised look. "Not tonight. I meant eventually. When you're ready. No pressure." "James," Emma said, stepping closer to him. "Thank you for last night. For this morning. For being willing to take a chance on something completely crazy. Thank you for crashing my cousin's wedding and turning my entire life upside down in the best possible way." He leaned down and kissed her softly, right there on the sidewalk in broad daylight, with her neighbors probably watching from their windows. It was nothing like the performative kiss from the night before, or even the tender moment for the photographer this morning. This kiss was just for them, sweet and promising and full of possibility. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. "Septigni." "Nulla," James said. "Sette," Emma confirmed. As she watched him walk away, Emma realized she was practically glowing with happiness. She felt like she could float up to her fourth-floor apartment instead of taking the stairs. Inside her tiny studio, she immediately called Rachel. "Emma, how did the celebrity wedding go? Did you get good photos?" "I got something much better than photos," Emma said, collapsing onto her futon with a huge grin. "I got accidentally engaged to a billionaire, lied to his entire family, nearly got exposed by Manhattan Society Weekly, and somehow ended up with a real date tonight with the most amazing man I've ever met. I'm sorry, what?" Emma spent the next hour telling Rachel the entire story, from the champagne spill to the fake engagement, to the morning's revelations. By the end, Rachel was laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Only you, Emma. Only you could crash the wrong wedding and accidentally find your soulmate." "He's not my soulmate," Emma protested. "We've known each other for less than a day. Honey, I've known you for 5 years, and I've never heard you talk about anyone the way you just talked about James. You described the way he looks at you like it was poetry." "Did I really?" "You literally said, 'When he looks at me, it's like he sees something wonderful that I didn't even know was there.'" Emma groaned. "I'm in trouble, aren't I?" "The best kind of trouble," Rachel assured her. "Now, what are you wearing tonight?" The rest of the afternoon flew by in a blur of outfit changes, phone calls from excited Wentworth family members, and increasingly frantic attempts to make her tiny apartment look presentable in case James wanted to come up after their date. At 6:45, Emma was putting the finishing touches on her makeup when her building's buzzer rang. She looked out her window and saw James standing on the sidewalk, holding a small bouquet of flowers and looking up at her building with a nervous smile. She buzzed him up and spent the 3 minutes it took him to climb the stairs trying to calm her racing heart. When she opened her door, James was standing there looking absolutely devastating in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater, his hair slightly mussed from the walkover. "Hi," he said, offering her the flowers, a simple arrangement of white peonies and greenery that was somehow perfect. "Hi yourself," she managed. "These are beautiful. I remembered you telling Aunt Elizabeth you were allergic to peonies, but then I realized that was probably another improvised detail. So I took a chance. Good choice. I love peonies." She stepped back to let him into her apartment, suddenly self-conscious about the cramped space. James looked around her studio with genuine interest, taking in the mismatched furniture, the walls covered with articles she'd written, and the general organized chaos of a working journalist's life. "This is perfect," he said finally. "It's so completely you. You can't see the bed from the kitchen," Emma pointed out. "That's basically my only design criterion. Good criterion. Very practical." He noticed her articles covering one wall. "Are these all your pieces?" "Most of them. The good ones, anyway." She joined him at the wall, pointing to various clippings. "That one's about the underground restaurant scene in Brooklyn. That's a piece on small business owners who pivoted during the pandemic. And this one," she pointed to an article with her byline prominently displayed. "This one's about a community garden in Queens that's teaching urban farming to kids. These are incredible, Emma. This writing is smart and engaging and important. They're not exactly Pulitzer material." "Maybe not yet," James said, turning to face her. "But they're real journalism. You're telling stories about real people and real issues. That matters." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. "Ready for our first official date?" she asked, needing to change the subject before she did something embarrassing like cry. "More than ready," he said, offering her his arm. "But fair warning, I picked somewhere that serves the best chocolate dessert in Manhattan, because I have a feeling you're going to want to celebrate getting through our first honest conversation without any major disasters. You think pretty highly of our disaster avoidance abilities. I think pretty highly of our ability to turn disasters into adventures," James corrected. As they left her apartment and walked out into the cool evening air, Emma realized that whatever happened next, she was exactly where she wanted to be. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was moving towards something wonderful, instead of just trying to keep up with the chaos around her. "James," she said as they walked down the street, her hand tucked into his arm, "I have a good feeling about this, about the date, about all of it. The date, the family, the possibility of something real and lasting and wonderful." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his blue eyes serious and warm in the glow of the streetlights. "Emma Thompson," he said softly, "you are going to be the most beautiful disaster that ever happened to my carefully organized life." "And you," she replied, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him softly, "are going to be the best adventure I never planned for." As they walked into the restaurant together, both of them laughing at something James had said about the hostess's surprised expression, Emma felt a deep, settled happiness that she'd never experienced before. This was what it felt like to be exactly where you belonged, with exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. And the best part? This was just the beginning. 6 months later, Emma would look back on this night as the moment her real life began. But right now, walking into their first date with the man who'd accidentally become her everything, she was just happy to be living in the beautiful chaos of falling in love. The adventures that followed meeting Father O'Connor, the legendary poker night with Arthur, Ben's cookie-making disasters, Sophia's wedding where Emma actually was the maid of honor, and eventually, a year later, their own wedding in the same ballroom where they'd first met would all be wonderful. But this moment, walking hand in hand into their first real date, with the Manhattan evening sparkling around them and endless possibilities ahead, would always be the one that mattered most, because this was the moment when Emma Thompson and James Wentworth stopped pretending to be in love and started actually falling into it, and it was absolutely perfect. The end.